Hey guys, it's Rich with your Monday Spot on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about the witchy stuff. So we have a lot of ground to cover and, well, I guess as much time as I record on here to cover it. So, we have 3 different topics from 3 different people on witchy stuff. So I'm going to read each one and then we're going to just go into it from there. Jay writes, I was wondering about the group's different takes on using items that are now mass-produced or that are not naturally occurring for use in their craft or rituals. For instance, you can go down to one of the large camping stores and buy a cauldron or acquire one from various witchy stores. Back in the day, people usually repurposed a family heirloom or acquired one from an antique store. Some items that were made by hand are now available off the shelf. Also, due to modern technology, laboratory-grown crystals are available. Last year, I saw a really beautiful crystal that was Opalite. I really felt it calling to me. My hopes for the stone were dashed when someone pointed out that Opalite is man-made in labs. I recently acquired one anyway to use as a focal point for a similar item found in Druid Practice, but it is unknown what its historical nature was, a serpent stone or dragon egg. Okay, so Jay, going with your first point first, mass-produced items. Whenever I first started, I kind of went crazy with the mass-produced items. I still use many of them today. I have, whenever I travel, of course, I'm in a hotel room right now. I'm kind of mass-producing my videos for the Pagan Perspective, so I have them all done and they can come up in a timely manner. And I have my traveling bells. Now, I do have these, and they have a great sound to them, so I don't mind working with them whenever I go on travels. My wand is a clay wand that is mass-produced. My cauldron that I have is mass-produced. My chalice is man-made. It is done by a local glass blower. And I have shown that on my personal channel. I absolutely love it. It's blue with white swirls and everything. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't have a problem working with things that are mass-produced. Now, a cheaper option sometimes is to go out and find things that are not mass-produced. For instance, if you wanted bells, if you go to a flea market or an antique store, you can find bells galore. I've gone to an auction and I found bells that are used in Catholic Mass that have like the 4 little bells to them. It has a little handle that you ring like this and all that, and you go through it. It sounds wonderful, and I take it throughout my house to do a cleansing. I use that, and I got that for like 25 bucks, which is about what they go for. So I found those at auctions and whatnot. It's something that has a ceremonial use for other religious traditions that I use in my personal religious practice, and I find it seamlessly coincides. As far as cauldrons, you can find them at flea markets, yard sales, stuff like that. They're going to be a little bit more pricey, so I understand if people want to go out and they want to buy one of the little tiny cauldrons that are much less expensive. Still, they can get a little pricey. I think I've seen them upwards of $30 for the little ones with the lids and all that. But you can find them for a cheaper price than a big cauldron that you find that's from like the late 1800s, early 1900s that are huge and you can stick a whole body in there. Those ones can run up, hundreds to thousands of dollars for that one cauldron. Of course, you might use it for the rest of your life, but the chance that you have that much money to spend on one witchy item is a little bit out of a lot of people's price range. So I do understand if people want to repurpose things like using a regular pot or pan in their witchy practice as a cauldron until they get the finances to buy one that they actually like, that is at a decent price point. I have found smaller cauldrons at estate sales and estates that I've conducted, or cleanouts that I've done, where you can find little smelting pots, and you can find those still relatively cheap. But you end up repurposing them as a witchy item rather than as a smelting pot. So you can find stuff like that, and that's totally fine. But they're not always that easily accessible. They're not always easy to find. They're not always within your price range, depending on who's selling it. So as far as if you need a cauldron for a certain working, or that you constantly want to use, you might want to just go for the little pot that is, of course, already fire safe. And you might want to go for the mass-produced little cauldron that is made for that purpose, and use that instead of breaking the bank to go out and get something that's a lot older or a lot more heavy duty that's going to cost you a lot more money. So I understand that. As far as crystals, I have no problem with crystals that are made in factories. I don't necessarily like it, and I have an itchy nose and I don't know why, but I don't necessarily like it. But it is a thing that is still able to be used. I have the citrine here, and it has some lovely colors. Now this citrine most likely was created in a factory. It was probably a quartz that then they radiated to get that bright yellow color. A lot of times whenever you find natural citrine, it's not this, this bright and it's yellowing. So this is probably a factory piece. And I'm okay with that, because I'll tell you this, it works just the same. For me, it doesn't affect the way that it works, and I'm okay with that. If that's something that you have an issue with in your practice, that you kind of have an issue with things that are made in factories or that are altered in factories, then that's something that is to the individual person. It might not affect your practice if you just really don't care, and if it does the same job anyway, it doesn't really matter. If it does affect your practice, then of course you can't use it. I mean, this is a pretty big honking piece there. So yeah, I found this at an estate sale. Didn't cost me anything, because I was doing the clean out, so it didn't cost me anything. Whenever I do clean outs, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna clear everything out of the house and sell it. And depending on the conditions of the estates, whether it's we pay them a commission, or we might get paid to do the entire clean out, so they don't have to worry about it. So on this one, I think it's that we paid for the contents of the house and we got to keep whatever we wanted, and I saw the stone and picked it up and it was immediately mine. Yeah, my business partner was not getting that one. I've also shared in a previous video on this channel a amethyst piece that I usually have sitting on my desk at home that has a lot of little amethyst points. I've had that from a clean out that I did of somebody's house. So you can definitely find these things, and as long as it's not one of the clean outs that I do, you can probably find it at an estate sale, because let's face it, if it's at a clean out for me, it's probably not going to get onto the selling floor. So as far as me, you're probably not going to get it. But as far as other people, yes, they are willing to sell them. And sometimes you can get them for a relatively good price. Let's see, who's next? From Leah. I'm curious what everyone's thoughts might be in the Sephora beginner witch kits. What they were going to be selling, it seems like a pretty hot topic with divided opinions everywhere. Okay, now I can't remember exactly what was all in those Sephora kits. I know there was a tarot deck. This is obviously an older topic. Sephora Witch Kit. So it has a tarot deck, it has a smudge stick, I think it also had is that a rose quartz in there, and what else? Perfumes, okay. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what was in there. I remember this being a hot topic of discussion in the witchy community, and I understand why. Sephora is a big name brand that they deal in cosmetics and whatnot. It's not something that usually you would see them go out on a limb to promote witchy aesthetics in their day-to-day business. So whenever they come out with something like that, it seems to be just a money-making scheme. I'm not particularly a fan of money-making schemes whenever your intention is not actually in it. Now, if there was a person on that team that says, hey, I think we can develop a tarot deck that is specific and geared towards beginning witches, beginning pagans out there, and we can also add in some of the Sephora stuff, that's a totally different thing. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it, as long as if they make it known that this is not just a little kitschy thing that, you should just be picking up, and, that it's something just to be thrown about. This is something that is a serious undertaking that many people devote their lives to, such as doing tarot and being a reader and whatnot. Some people devote their entire lives to researching this, and you're kind of demeaning these individuals' professions, their daily lives, their livelihood in general. You're cheapening it by putting it in this little floofy box and saying that it's a witch kit. Not exactly loving that. Also, the smudge stick, not exactly a fan of that, because there are Native Americans out there who grow the white sage and are not able to use it because they sell so much of it. They have not been able to use it in their own traditions and practices. So not exactly a fan of that, just selling it off and saying, oh, here's a witch kit. Now, I am guilty because I do love me some white sage. I will buy that up and I do use it. I try not to buy in such massive amounts of quantity that it would put a shortage out there. Usually a stick at a time, or maybe 2 sticks at a time, so I have a spare. But beyond that, I really don't have the need to overspend on that type of thing. But whenever you're including it in kits, you're mass producing these kits to go out, and you're putting a burden on the herb itself being able to grow and be harvested in time. So that's something I have an issue with. And not to mention that, what kind of witch are you gearing this towards? Are you gearing this towards a Wiccan practice? Are you basing this on a Druid practice? I'm really confused. Are you basing this on a Native American practice? Because they all have drastically different views on what should be included in that kit. A Native American practice might not include tarot, but they might include a smudge stick. And as far as the rose quartz, well, who doesn't love a rose quartz, let's just say. Now, if you instead put it as a New Age kit or something like that, and taken out the sage, that's a totally different story. But putting in that sage just perpetuates the buying of sage and the endangering of this plant. So I kind of try to steer away from even buying it anymore if I can. So yeah, as far as the tarot deck, producing something like that, it really kind of gets to me just a little bit. Not a lot, because, they see a need out there and they're trying to address it. but the way that they're doing it, it looks kind of cheap and chintzy. So I'm really not into it being in that type of packaging. Because again, I am a reader. I do have this as part of a profession of mine. Beyond doing antiques and collectibles, I am also a tarot reader. So I kind of take a little bit offense to it whenever you're including a tarot deck into a little floofy package and saying, hey, look, it's innocent. No, this is a serious thing that people devote part of their life to, if not their entire lives, to studying and revealing to others. And it's, to me, whenever I read, it's kind of like a psychological sit down and kind of like a counseling session. So even though I'm not a certified counselor or anything, I equate it to kind of like a counseling session where we're sitting down, we're going to hash out some stuff that we need to talk about, so, or that you need to talk about, and I will listen. So to me, that's kind of what tarot is, and putting in a fluffy package and trying to sell it just to make a lot of money is not necessarily a thing that I can really get behind. So for me, that's something that I would definitely need to address if I were to make something like that, if I were Sephora. So, yeah. And then Shadow Sun writes, favorite budget ideas for spells, such as supplies, herbs, or just in general. Okay, I shared a couple of those, as I get up on the chair here, I shared a couple of those a little bit earlier whenever I covered Jay's question. Some things that you can do if you are on a budget is go to flea markets, go to antique stores. Sometimes, especially with mine, if you don't see the price that you like, we can negotiate it. You know, I wouldn't say don't be afraid to negotiate in an antique store, but I would say, you know, if it's within a reasonable area, just go ahead and buy it for that price. If it's totally like way outside your price limit and you think it should be a lot less, you know, don't be afraid to ask if they can give a little bit of a discount. Now, just don't get annoying about it, because we do have customers like that come in. So, go to antique stores, go to thrift shops. Goodwill's a great place to go. Go to flea markets, like I said. At the flea market, I found this quartz crystal. Oh my gosh, the light is actually kind of doing it some justice there. Cool. I found this at the flea market. I think I spent $25, I think, something like that. But I mean, it's a beautiful quartz point. Oh, I got this itchy nose. And I think I spent 25 bucks on it. So yeah, not a large price for something that is as big as my hand, or, you know, bigger than the palm of my hand. This is probably a good, I'd say about 5 inches tall. Yeah. So it's pretty huge. So yeah, not a bad price for something this big. So you can definitely find some good priced items at a flea market, at a thrift shop, at an antique store. If you go into a thrift store, you can sometimes find little cauldrons for a decent price. You can find mortar and pestles for a decent price. What else did they ask about? As far as herbs, if you go to Walmart, I know. If you go to Walmart, Walgreens, Walgreens has some essential oils in there. Walmart has some essential oils. Walmart also has herbs that are used for cooking that you can also use in your spell work. So go ahead and raid a Walmart and find some of the things in there that coincide with the spell purposes that you need. Sometimes you can find crystals in there. Awesome. I've heard of, where was it? Was it Home Goods or TJ Maxx? One of those two. I think it's Home Goods. You can find crystals in there. Michael's, you can find crystals in there. Let's see. Joanne Fabrics, I'm not sure. AC Moore, I think you can find crystals in AC Moore too. Again, not positive, but pretty sure you can find them in Michael's. And those are going to be your like quartz, rose quartz, maybe some amethyst. I mean, you're not going to find a vast selection of crystals in there, but you will find some. There are some stores that have the big rock things, the rock stations, where you can just get a handful of rocks and put them in a little baggie for like $5 or something like that. You can get a lot of rocks that way, and you can pick out the ones that you want. There are a lot of rock stores that actually have stuff like that, where you can pick out which ones you want, put them in a small little baggie, and you pay by the bag. So don't be afraid to check those out. Some of the caverns out there, if you have caverns in your area, sometimes they have those types of things in their little gift shop and whatnot, where you can just take a handful of rocks. I've done that before. Also, don't be afraid to go mining for some rocks. Depending on where you're at, you have mines that are around your area where they, for a small fee, will take you to a plot of land where you can mine for your own rocks. I've done that down in Murfreesboro, Arkansas, or it was outside of Murfreesboro. Murfreesboro, I went and I mined for diamonds, but didn't find any. Not that much excitement, but it was a fun day, and I think I spent $25 for the entire day to be out there. I've gone, before I reached Murfreesboro, there was a crystal mining area, and it cost me like, I think $15, and I went into the quarry and everything where, they just put big mounds of dirt, of clay, and as long as if you got the crystal and you could put it in your vehicle, it was yours. I got huge chunks of quartz crystals. Huge chunks, I mean like big. As big as my torso type. I've gotten those, and it only cost me $15. If you're on a trip like that, don't be afraid to seek those places out, because it is a lot of fun to do that. Just be careful sharp corners or sharp points on your crystals that you don't get cut, because trust me, it does happen. And don't wear white shoes if you're going to be digging through clay, red clay, because they will turn your shoes red and later pink. Trust me, I know. But just, take note of some of that. But have fun with it. Whenever you go to thrift stores, have fun looking around. If you go to like a Goodwill, have fun looking around. Take a friend with you that kind of thinks outside of the box a little. Sometimes whenever you go to a Goodwill, you will find tarot cards. You will find crystals, you will find bells, you will find cauldrons, you will find all kinds of things that can be used for an assortment of witchy items. So don't be afraid to go out and look. And sometimes don't have an idea in your mind, this is what I'm going to find. Because whenever you find something and you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, I can use this, and I kind of need one of those. So don't always go with an idea in your head of what you're looking to hunt out. And then sometimes whenever you do, you'll find it. Sometimes whenever you don't go with an idea in your head, you find it. So play around with that a little bit. Put your intention out there before you go out to look of what you're trying to look for, and maybe Spirit will enable that item to kind of just jump out at you. So have fun with it. Try a couple different techniques, try a couple different items, and see how they work for you. I think that's all that I have for this week. This video is getting a little bit long, and I still need to edit it down. So until next time, may you have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye-bye.